Welcome to Welcome to Read with Us. My name is Kathy, and I work in Reference and Reader's Advisory at the Rawlings Library. First of all, I want to thank Simon and Schuster for their permission today to read from The Deal of a Lifetime, a novella by Frederick Backman. Over the next couple of days, my colleagues and I will be reading this novella right here. And today we will begin. I'm going to start right now. A few words before the rest of the words. This is a short story about what you would be prepared to sacrifice in order to save a life. If it was not only your future on the line, but also your past. Not only the places you are going, but the footprints you have left behind. If it was all of it, all of you, who would you give yourself up for? I wrote this story late one night, shortly before Christmas in 2016. My wife and children were sleeping a few arms' lengths away. I was very tired. It had been a long and strange year, and I had been thinking a lot about the choices families make. Every day, everywhere, we go down one road or another. We play around, we stay at home, we fall in love and fall asleep right next to each other. We discover we need someone to sweep us off our feet to realize what time really is. So I tried to tell a story about that. It was published in the local newspaper of my hometown, Helsingborg, in the southernmost part of Sweden. All the locations in the story are real. I went to school around the corner from the hospital, and the bar where the characters drink is owned and run by childhood friends of mine. I've gotten very drunk there on several occasions. If you're ever around Helsingborg, I highly recommend it. I live 600 kilometers further north now in Stockholm with my family. So in retrospect, I think the story was not just about how I felt about love and death that night I was sitting on the floor next to the bed my wife and our kids were sleeping in, but also about my feelings for the place I grew up. Maybe all people have that feeling deep down that your hometown is something you can never really escape, but can never really go home to either, because it's not home anymore. We're not trying to make peace with it, not with the streets and bricks of it, just with the person we were back then. And maybe forgive ourselves for everything we thought we would become and didn't. Maybe you will find this to be a strange story, I don't know. It's not very long, so at least it will be over quickly in that case. But I hope my younger self would have read it and found it to be, well, not horrible. I think he and I could have gone for a beer, talked about choices. I would have shown him pictures of my family, and he would have said, all right, you did all right. Anyway, this is the story. Thank you for taking the time to read it. With love, Frederick Backman. The Deal of a Lifetime, a novella. Hi, it's your dad. You'll be waking up soon. It's Christmas Eve morning in Helsingborg, and I've killed a person. It's not how fairy tales usually begin, I know. But I took a life. Does it make a difference if you know whose it was? Maybe not. Most of us so desperately want to believe that every heart which stops beating is missed equally. If we're asked, are all lives worth the same? The majority of us will reply with a resounding yes. But only until someone points to a person we love and asks, what about that life? Does it make a difference if I killed a good person, a loved person, a valuable life? If it was a child. She was 5. I met her a week ago. There was a small red chair in the hospital TV room. It was hers. It wasn't red when she arrived, but she could see that it wanted to be. It took 22 boxes of crayons, but that didn't matter. She could afford it. Everyone here gave her crayons all the time, as though she could draw away her illness, color away the needles and the drugs. She knew that wasn't possible, of course. She was a smart kid, but she pretended for their sakes. So she spent her days drawing on paper because it made all the adults happy. At night, she colored in the chair because it really wanted to be read. She had a soft toy, a rabbit. She called it Babbitt. When she first learned to speak, the adults thought she was calling it Babbitt because she couldn't say rabbit. But she called it Babbitt because Babbitt was its name. That shouldn't be so hard to understand, really, even for an adult. Babbitt got scared sometimes, and then it got to sit on the red chair. It might not be clinically proven that sitting on a red chair made you less scared, but Babbitt didn't know that. The girl sat on the floor next to Babbitt, patting its paw and telling it stories. One night, I was hidden around a corner in the corridor, and I heard her say, "I'm going to die soon, Babbitt. Everyone dies. It's just that most people will die in maybe 100,000 years, but I might die already tomorrow." She added in a whisper, "I hope it's not tomorrow." Then she suddenly looked up in fear, glanced around as though she heard footsteps in the corridor. She quickly grabbed Babbitt and whispered good night to the red chair. "It's her. She's coming," the girl hissed, running toward her room, hiding herself under the covers next to her mother. I ran too. I've been running all my life because every night a woman in a thick gray knitted jumper walks the hospital's corridors. She carries a folder. She has our names, all our names, written inside. It's Christmas Eve, and by the time you wake up, the snow will probably have melted. Snow never lasts very long in Helsingborg. It's the only place I know where the wind comes in at an angle from below like it's frisking you. When the umbrellas protect you better, if you hold them upside down. I was born here, but I've never gotten used to it. Helsingborg and I will never find peace. Maybe everyone feels that way about their hometown. The place we're from never apologizes, never admits it was wrong about us. It just sits there at the end of the motorway, whispering, "You might all be rich and powerful now, and maybe you do come home with expensive watches and fancy clothes, but you can't fool me because I know who you really are. You're just a scared little boy." I met death by the side of my wrecked car last night after the accident. My blood was everywhere. The woman in the gray jumper was standing next to me with a disapproving look on her face, and she said, "You shouldn't be here." I was so scared of her because I'm a winner, a survivor. And all survivors are scared of death. That's why we're still here. My face was cut to shreds, my shoulder out of joint, and I was trapped inside 1.5 million kroners worth of steel and technology. When I saw the woman, I shouted, "Take someone else. I can give you someone else to kill." But she just leaned forward, looked disappointed, and said, "It doesn't work like that. I don't make the decisions. I just look after the logistics and the transportation." For who? For God? Or the devil? Or someone else? I sobbed. She sighed. "I stay out of the politics. I just do my job. Now, give me my folder." It wasn't the car crash that brought me to the hospital. I was there long before that. Cancer. I'd met the girl for the first time 6 days earlier when I was smoking on the fire escape so the nurses wouldn't see me. They went on and on about smoking, as though it would have time to kill me. The door to the corridor was ajar, and I could hear the girl talking to her mother in the TV room. They played the same game every night when the hospital was so quiet that you could hear the snowflakes bouncing against the windows, like goodnight kisses. The mother whispered to the girl, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" The girl knew the game was for her mother's sake, but she pretended it was for hers. She laughed as she said, "Doctor," and "engineer," plus her perennial favorite, "space hunter." Once the mother fell asleep in an armchair, the girl stayed where she was, coloring in the chair, which wanted to be red, and talking to Babbitt, whose name was that. "Is it cold on death?" asked Babbitt. But Babbitt didn't know. So the girl packed thick gloves in her backpack, just to be on the safe side. She spotted me through the glass. She wasn't scared. I remember being furious at her parents for that. What kind of adult doesn't raise their kid to be terrified of a strange 45-year-old chain-smoking bloke who's staring at her from a fire escape? But this girl wasn't scared. She waved. I waved back. She grabbed Babbitt's paw, came over to the door, and spoke through the crack. "Do you have cancer too?" "Yes," I replied, because that was the truth. "Are you famous? You're in a picture in Mummy's newspaper." "Yes," I replied, because that was also the truth. The papers wrote about my money. No one knew I was ill yet, but I'm the kind of person whose diagnosis will make the news. I'm not an ordinary person. Everyone will hear about it when I die. When 5-year-old girls die, no one writes about that. There aren't any memorials in the evening papers. Their feet are still too small. They haven't had time to make anyone care about their footsteps yet. But people care about me because of what I'll leave behind, what I've built and achieved, businesses and properties and assets. Money isn't money to me, not like it is to you. I save and calculate and don't worry about it. It's nothing but points for me, just a measure of my success. "It's not the same cancer you have," I said to the girl, because that was my only consolation in the diagnosis, that the doctor had apologetically explained. "You have a very, very unusual type of cancer. I don't even get cancer like you people." The girl blinked firmly and asked, "Is it cold on death?" "I don't know," I said. I should have said something else, something bigger, but I'm not that man. So I just dropped my cigarette and mumbled, "You should stop drawing on furniture." I know what you're thinking. What a bastard I am. And you're right. But the vast majority of successful people don't become bastards. We were bastards long before. That's why we've been successful. "You're allowed to draw on furniture when you have cancer?" the girl suddenly exclaimed with a shrug. "No one says anything?" I don't know what it was about that, but I started to laugh. When had I last done that? She laughed too. Then she and Babbitt ran off to their room. It's so easy to kill someone. All a person like me needs is a car and a few seconds. Because people like you trust me. You drive thousands of kilos of metal at hundreds of kilometers an hour, hurtling through the darkness, with the people you love most sleeping in the back seat. And when someone like me approaches from the opposite direction, you trust that I don't have bad brakes, that I'm not looking for my phone between the seats, not driving too fast, not drifting between lanes because I'm blinking the tears from my eyes, that I'm not sitting on the slip road to the 111 with my headlights out, just waiting for a lorry. You trust me, that I'm not drunk, that I'm not going to kill you. The woman with the gray sweater pulled me out of the wreckage this morning. She wiped my blood from her folder. "Kill someone else," I begged. She took a resigned breath through her nose. It doesn't work like that. I don't have that kind of influence. I can't just swap a death for a death. I have to swap a death for a life. Do it then, I screamed. The woman shook her head sadly, reached out and pulled a cigarette from my breast pocket. It was bent, but not broken. She smoked it in 2 long drags. I've actually given up, she said defensively. I lay bleeding on the ground and pointed to the folder. Is my name in there? Everyone's is. What do you mean, a life for a life? She groaned. You really are an idiot. You always have been. At one point in time, you were mine, my son. The girl at the hospital reminded me of you. Something happened when you were born. You cried so loudly, and it was the first time it had happened to me, the first time I'd felt pain for someone else. I couldn't stay with someone who had that kind of power over me. Every parent will take 5 minutes in the car outside the house from time to time, just sitting there, just breathing and gathering the strength to head back inside to all their responsibilities. The suffocating expectation of being good, coping. Every parent will take 10 seconds in the stairwell occasionally, key in hand, not putting it in the lock. I was honest. I only waited a moment before I ran. I spent your entire childhood traveling. You were the girl's age when you asked what I did. I told you I made money. You said everyone did that. I said no, the majority of people just survive. They think their things have a value, but nothing does. Things only have a price, based on expectation, and I do business with that. The only thing of value on earth is time. 1 second will always be a second. There's no negotiating that. You despise me now because I've devoted all my seconds to my work, but I have at least devoted them to something. What have your friends' parents devoted their lives to? Barbecues and rounds of golf, charter holidays and TV shows. What will they leave behind? You hate me now, but you were once mine. Someone had told you that the stars aren't really above us but below, and that the earth spun so quickly that if you were small and light, you could easily fall off straight into all that darkness. The porch door was open. Your mother was listening to Leonard Cohen, so I told you that we actually lived deep in a cozy grotto, that the sky was like a stone covering the opening. Then what are the stars? You asked, and I told you they were cracks through which the light could trickle in. Then I said that your eyes were the same thing to me, tiny, tiny cracks through which the light could trickle out. You laughed so loudly then. Have you ever laughed like that since? I laughed too. I, who had wanted to live a high life above everyone else, ended up with a son who would rather live deep beneath the surface. In the living room, your mother turned up the volume and danced, laughing on the other side of the window. You crawled higher in my lap. We were a family then, albeit fleetingly. I belonged to you both, for a moment or two. I know you wished you had an ordinary father, one who didn't travel, wasn't famous, one who would have been happy with just 2 eyes on him, yours. You never wanted to say your surname and hear, sorry, but is that your dad? But I was too important for that. I didn't take you to school, didn't hold your hand, didn't help you blow out your birthday candles. I never fell asleep in your bed halfway through our 4th bedtime story, with your cheek on my collarbone. But you'll have everything that everyone else longs for: wealth, freedom. I abandoned you, but at least I abandoned you at the top of the hierarchy of needs. But you don't care about that, do you? You're your mother's son. She was smarter than me. I never quite forgave her for that. She also felt more than me. That was her weakness. And I meant I could hurt her with words. You might not remember when she left me. You were still so small. But the truth is that I didn't even notice. I came home after a trip, and it took me 2 days to realize that neither of you was there. Several years later, when you were 11 or 12, the two of you had a huge argument about something, and you took a bus to my house in the middle of the night and said you wanted to live with me. I said no. You were completely beside yourself, sobbing and crying on the rug in the hallway, screaming that it wasn't fair. I looked you in the eye and said, life isn't fair. You bit your lip, lowered your eyes, and replied, lucky for you. You might have stopped being mine that day. I don't know. Maybe that's when I lost you. If that's the case, I was wrong. If that's the case, life is fair. And we will continue tomorrow with more of The Deal of a Lifetime by Frederick Bachman. Thanks for being here.